make some Asian style meatballs and brown rice. Brown rice takes a little bit longer than white rice. It's more like an hour. And I cook it straight on the stove top. So we're going to start with that, and then about 30 minutes in, we'll come back and start our meatballs while our rice finishes up. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is turn our pot on, the heat on. I put on about a 7. I have 3 cups of chicken stock, low sodium, because we're a low sodium family. And then a cup of brown rice. Now we like to use brown rice instead of white rice because it has a lot more minerals in it and vitamins. White rice is kind of stripped of all that. So we're going to stir this around, put the lid on until it comes to a boil. Then once it comes to a boil, we're going to reduce it to a simmer for an hour. Now that it's boiling, we're going to take it down to a simmer. We're going to stir it one more time. We are going to put our lid back on and set a timer for 30 minutes. That way we know when to start our meatballs. Alright, our rice has been cooking for 30 minutes, and so now we're going to go on to preparing our meatballs. I have a little over a pound of ground turkey. Funny thing about turkey, it's a very lean meat, so in order for it to have moisture in a meatball, I add some vegetables, because once they cook, the water comes out in it and makes your meatballs really moist. So I'm going to finely chop a portabella mushroom. Here's another thing we discovered. We get mushroom caps, giant mushroom caps. At our grocery store, they sell them in a package, but we found out one day that they're the same mushrooms outside of a package that are just sitting in a box. All they do is unwrap the ones that are already packaged that don't fit on the shelf. And they're about 2/3 the price. So it's great to save money that way. You don't need them packaged. We get them in a little grocery bag. We bring them home. We wash them, and then I chop them. So we're going to do a fine chop. We want itty bitty pieces, because the other part of this is I don't want my children to know they're eating mushrooms, so we don't make the pieces too big. Alright, so once we get those finely chopped, we're going to throw them in the bowl with our ground turkey. And then we're going to add some spinach. It's another way to get iron and, of course, vegetables into my kids and my husband's diet without them realizing they're eating vegetables. So I take these spinach leaves, and once again, we're going to very finely chop. You need itty bitty pieces. You don't want big chunks of spinach. So meatballs are a great way to disguise vegetables, and I do it to my family all the time, and most times they have no idea. Little shredded carrot, little spinach, mushroom. The only thing I will tell you we do not do is onions, because my husband can find the texture of the tiniest of onions, and he hates them. So I tend to stay away from onions when I'm trying to sneak food in. We're going to add that right to the bowl, and we're going to mix it together. I use my hands because I just find it easier than a spoon, and I always wear gloves when I do it because I'm funny about textures on my hands, and my whole family makes fun of me. But that's how I do meatballs. Then we are going to take a 1/2 cup of breadcrumbs, unseasoned and plain breadcrumbs, not panko, because the panko make it too dry. And then 1 egg, slightly beaten. I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil. I have a tablespoon of onion powder and a tablespoon of garlic salt that I added together already. And then a tablespoon of cilantro. Now if you have fresh cilantro and you want to use it, You could do that in place of the other vegetables, but if you use the cilantro, don't use the spinach because it'll be too moist and your meatballs won't hold together into a round shape. So we mix this all together, and you want to make sure everything comes together. Now what we're going to do is take a tablespoon. I have measuring. It's an ice cream scoop for most people. And I'm going to pull out a tablespoon. I do this to make sure that they're uniform, otherwise they won't cook at the same temperature and the same time. And we want everything to cook the same. So when I'm doing my meatballs on the stove, I can do it differently. But when I'm doing them in the oven, I want them all to cook simultaneously. So we're going to cook these once they're all rolled out. We're going to cook these in a 400-degree oven for about 25 minutes. So our meatballs are in the oven, our rice is still simmering. We're going to make our sauce for the meatballs. We're going to take a cup of soy sauce, a cup of brown sugar. Turn the stove on to a medium. I'm going to whisk those two together. Now these meatballs we're going to use as a full meal, which is why I'm making the rice to go with it. But you could make these as just an appetizer with this as a dipping sauce. Put little toothpicks in them and serve them just like they are. Alright, now we are going to add some rice vinegar, that's 4 tablespoons, and a teaspoon of ground ginger. If you want, you can use fresh ginger. We just don't keep it on hand, so I tend to use the ground. Fresh ginger probably would work out better. And if you're going to use fresh ginger, you need about a tablespoon for every quarter teaspoon. So this would require you to use about 4 tablespoons of fresh ginger. Okay, and we're gonna put a lid on this, and reduce our heat, and just let all those flavors marinate together while our meatballs finish cooking. So when we're all done, I put a cup and a half of brown rice, 6 meatballs, and a half a cup of sauce over the top, and we are ready to eat.